Welcome to the Marvel vs. DC comic show hosted by yours truly, Mike Spider Slayer. Guys, welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love daily comic book content and you like me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, guys, what are you waiting for? Please do so now. Apologize in advance as I'm still dealing with the whole flu situation. I'm trying to push through it in each video and trying to get a little bit better. Hopefully you guys will appreciate also this new modified version of Marvel vs. DC Comics, as this is a new series, so I've been trying to tweak it, and with some of your guys' comments and advice, I did change some things. So what we're going to do is we're going to run the list of Marvel comics first, we're going to grade them, and then we're going to go down the line with DC Comics, and we'll grade them, and then we'll find out which company reigns supreme at the end of the day and who wins the current week. I think this will actually help the flow of the show a little bit instead of pitting certain comics against each other, right? So hopefully you guys will like this. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this week's episode. So here we go. We're starting with things off with Dr. Doom and Rocket Raccoon. This is issue 1. It's a 36-page comic for the price of $5. This one is written by J. Michael Straczynski, and the art is done by Will Robson. The characters in this comic book look great, especially the introduction as you get to see Rocket come to Doom's castle. I thought that was kind of cool, right? And just all the characters look great. Even flashback situations were really good, and this is really kind of like a time travel piece. And what happens is Dr. Doom recruits Rocket Raccoon here to try to discover, like, what was before the Big Bang? Like, why does Earth need to exist? And when you read this comic book, you're kind of like, oh, wow, that's kind of insane why, everything exists. And of course, it all surrounds Doom, right? But the story that you get in between it was a lot of fun. I love the dynamic between Rocket Raccoon and Dr. Doom here. It shows you that, these two brilliant minds can actually really work. And this book really surprised me. I didn't think it was going to be as good as that was, because it's just a one-shot with a team-up book. But I'm giving this book an A+. And let me tell you, Marvel's out to a good start this week. Wolverine Revenge Red Band Edition issue 4. It seems like it's been a little while since we did get issue 3. This one is 32 pages, and this is a $6 comic book. It's polybagged, and it's written by Jonathan Hickman, and the art is done by Greg Capullo. Now, when I read this comic book and I was looking at the artwork in it, I was kind of like, okay, it's not bad, but it's no like stellar Greg Capullo artwork, and there wasn't anything really here that got me going, wow, this is really super bloody and gory, right? And in this issue, you wind up seeing time pass, and we see Sabretooth still alive, and Sabretooth winds up recruiting the next generation of villains here, the next Omegas, right? And you see old man or older man Logan fight these same characters, but the next generations of them. And I'm kind of just like, oh my God, what is the point of this series, and what was the point of this issue? It was nothing more that we haven't already seen, where just Wolverine just basically shreds these characters up, and that was the end of it. This book is such a disappointment in my eyes. There's no point to it whatsoever. So I am giving this one a D for disappointment. The artwork's not half bad, right? It's Greg Capullo, the coloring is nice, action scenes are pretty good, but it's just super repetitive, and man, I wouldn't recommend this. This is something that I was highly anticipating last year, and this has just been a complete waste of time. Our next book on tap for Marvel here goes to Uncanny XMen. This is issue 9, legacy numbering 709, 32 pages for the price of $5. This book is written by Gail Simone. Usually the artwork is done by Dave Marquez, and it's not this time. It's done by Adria Bresson. And when it comes to the artwork in the next issue, are we going to get Marquez back? I'm trying to find out for you real quick as this loads. No. So this might be a story arc where Marquez actually takes a break and then he'll make his comeback. But it's always a shame when you don't have him on the artwork, because he is obviously one of the selling pieces for this comic book. And he's what makes this comic book work in my eyes, right? Now, in this book, we wind up getting to see more of these young mutants. They just survived this Grand Malcolm event, and now there's an opportunity to take a break and kind of be kids and have these guys go out to the mall, and you wind up seeing kind of like an X-Men attached to him, like chaperone with them and whatnot, and you get to learn a little bit more about them, right? And it's kind of fun to see them go to the mall and hang out and things like that. But again, if you flip this over, devil's advocate here, if you're not a fan of these characters, then you're not going to want to read this comic book, because originally why you wanted to read Uncanny X-Men is because you wanted to read it for your favorite characters, and we spend so much time focusing on these new characters. They just need to have a new book of their own called The New Mutants and be done with it, man. There's too many characters in their book. There's too many of them trying to get panel time, and I think it takes away from the book. That's just my opinion to it, right? Now, while they go to the mall, we wind up seeing them get attacked by these sentinel dogs that Karina Ellis has put together, and they're running from these dogs. That's kind of basically what this is. So yeah, there's some action in here, there's some fun moments, but this is not really blowing my mind like an Uncanny X-Men title should be. So I'm going to grade this book a very average C. The artwork was very much average. I felt the story was average. We get to learn a little bit more about those new X characters, but is that what you really want in Uncanny X-Men? The Amazing Spider-Man. This is issue 66. This is legacy numbering 960. 32 pages for the price of $5. This one is written by Justina Ireland, and the art is done by Andrea Briccardo. So when it comes to this book, we're still dealing with a depressed Peter Parker that is dealing with the weight of loss on his shoulders due to the challenge of that Sidekick thing that was happening. And listen, when it comes to this 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, I was expecting it to be like 8 issues and that's it. Now we're getting like 8 issues plus these point issues, and we're trying to spread it out all the way until April, and I'm just like already over it, because this particular issue was very, I would say, just very depressing. You know what I'm saying? It's just like he's upset because, he just sees what's the point in life based off of what happened in the last issue, and it looks like we get the breakup between him and Shay, and then within the next page he's like making out with Felicia here, asking her for advice and all these different things. And it just, I don't know, man. I'm just very depressed that Amazing Spider-Man is just not very good at the moment. I get it, and I'm sure other people are upset too, because this is a character that is very much not in character right now. This is not Peter Parker. He would not be down in the dumps, hiding and all those different things, right? So I don't know. I don't know what to say. I didn't hate this issue because I was fine with the breakup, if that's what this is, with Shay, and I was fine with the hookup with Felicia, because if he is going to have a relationship, it should be with Felicia, and I think those two are great with each other. So we'll see what happens with this one going forward. I gave this one a C-. I didn't absolutely hate it. I just don't like the depressingness of the comic book. If that's even a word, I don't even know. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You know what? Without this comic book, I don't know where Marvel would be. This is Ultimate Spider-Man. This is issue 13. So this is the new story arc with the whole version of like Kraven's Last Hunt in the Ultimate Universe. This one is 32 pages for the price of $5. It's written by Jonathan Hickman, and the art is done by Marco Cicchetto. The artwork in this actual issue is outstanding. There's so many great scenes in this comic book, whether you get introduced, and there's going to be some spoilers here because it's such a good comic, whether you get introduced to a new Black Spider-Man or you get to get introduced to this world of the Savage Land. It's just absolutely awesome. And we've gotten to see in this issue where Craven took Peter and Harry, and kind of the deal that he has to make with Mole Man in order to get him to do his, his hunt, and just the desperation on Harry and Peter in the beginning of this hunt is amazing. And again, with Richard Parker being in this comic book and taking the next step up here, I was kind of like, I didn't see that coming at all. When you read it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And then we get to see Black Cat in here also, and that could lead into a future relationship. Like, I was just, my mind was turning when I read this comic book, and this was absolutely great, and I will recommend it. This one gets an A+. So Marvel wasn't great in the middle, but the bookends here were both A+ books. So hopefully it continues on the momentum when it comes to Ultimate Spider-Man. Moving on to DC Comics, we have Green Arrow. This is issue 20, legacy numbering 353, 28 pages for the price of $4. This one is done by Chris Condon, and the art is done by Montos. I was more interested in this comic after reading the end of issue 2. Now reading this entire issue, I'm way more vested now. Okay, the artwork I feel like at times may not be the best artwork. I feel like characters lack detail. Like, when I mean detail, look at this woman. She has like no wrinkles or real detail in her facial features. It's just flat. And I would like a little bit more realistic facial expressions in here. Good action, good panel layouts in here, right? So let's talk about the story here. So in this story, Ollie's been dealing with this, what's called the freshwater killer, and they thought they had to kill her at the end of this last issue, and that's not the case. You wind up finding out that this woman was really not the killer. She was out to kill somebody because of what happened to her and her family. So what Ollie finds out is that there was this apartment complex that was built on this this hazardous materials or hazardous waste plant or whatever it is long time ago, and people bought these apartments and lived there, and we found out that people developed diseases. Okay, and who was behind that deal? Well, partially, and that was Ollie Queen, and he winds up kind of holding himself responsible in this comic, and he's all depressed and he's upset, and then at the end you wind up seeing possibly him maybe getting attacked. I was like, oh damn, that's pretty intense. And how this book opened up and how it captured me is that it talked about this young boy developing epilepsy because he had a high level of something in his system based off of where he was living. But the way they described epilepsy was so like perfect, because I suffer from epilepsy, so I found myself very intrigued on, on them going into how the brain works and what causes a seizure and whatnot. So that just kind of hit home for me, right? And just seeing the mom react on how her boy has this disease for the first time, very, very interesting. I definitely recommend this book. At the end of the day, I would say that this book is a B+. Definitely a must read. The only thing that's kind of holding it back a little bit, again, is that artwork. It's not my favorite artwork in the world, but I want to see how this story continues. This next discussion might be the biggest discussion of the week where you might disagree with me on. And this one is Justice League Unlimited issue 3, 36 pages, $4. It's written by Mark Waid. The art is done by Dan Mora. The artwork tends to be absolutely awesome when Dan Mora does it. I think it's great. I think there's a lot going on in this comic book. There's a lot to look at. A lot of great things to draw your attention to certain details. The colors are really nice. Facial expressions are really good too. So when it comes to the story though, there's just so much that's going on. It's just, I don't like when we have this many plot points, right? And I said this about In Bloom. I talked about that in Indie Gems. It's just like when you have so many different little plot threads going on and so many different characters, it kind of takes me out of the book, right? It's kind of like Uncanny XMen, which we talked about earlier. It's like you have your Justice League that is dealing with this group called Inferno. They're lighting the the rainforest on fire, and they got to try to deal with that. And then there's certain characters that are over here, like with Plastic Man, that's dealing with the whole Atom Project situation, which that's a mini series in itself. And now we're dealing with Swamp Thing in here, where he could possibly die or whatnot. And I'm reading this book, and I'm like, my God, there's so much. And you got Renee Montoya, who is, on the Watchtower, and she's, protecting the Watchtower. And then you got, like, what's his name? Airwave, who could be a potential traitor in this book. And I'm just like, where the heck are we going, dude? Like, why can't we just slow things down and focus on a plot point here or a plot point there, right? Like, my biggest thought when this comic book came out was, hey, we got the Justice League Unlimited. Let's get Ollie, Black Canary, let's get freaking Power Girl, and let's get the so-and-so together, and let's have them go on a mission and do this for a story arc, and then they're done, and then let's go on a different one. Like, that's kind of how I thought it would be. Maybe that might be too simplistic, maybe point A to point B for some people, but that's kind of what I wanted here, and I think this comic book is going to lead to the next DC main event, because I think I read something that there's an event coming out based off of this stuff here. So I don't know, man. I'm just not into Justice League Unlimited all that much. I think the artwork is great. I'm not saying this doesn't have potential, but for me, I'm giving this just a C. This is something that it's just not up my wheelhouse right now. Do you guys agree or disagree? Superman issue 22. This is legacy numbering 865. 28 pages for the price of $5. Written by Joshua Williamson. The art here, again, is done by Dan Mora. Just like Justice League Unlimited, guys, Dan Mora's artwork is phenomenal. Look at this space cruiser here as we get to see, these cast of characters come to Earth because they want Doomsday, right? And so in the beginning of this comic, we get to see Lois and Superman have this this conversation with this guy saying, Doomsday killed our race and did this and did that. You need to hand him over. And just the interrogation process between the three characters was absolutely awesome. And then you just get nonstop badass action from there on out. Balls to the walls, just really great stuff. And like advertised, man, you get Doomsday teaming up with freaking Superman in this book, and it is freaking the shit. And you get Lex Luthor in this comic book as well, maybe getting possibly a little bit of his memory back, or maybe his intellect, which was very interesting too. I'm giving this book an A+. This story is great. I think Joshua Williamson is a great writer for DC Comics and a great writer for Superman just in general. He's done a bang-up job. I've said this for a couple weeks now. This is the best Superman run that I have read in quite some time, and I would highly recommend you guys reading this. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the show so far. Do you have any guesses yet on who's going to win for the week? Is it Marvel? Is it DC? Either way, hopefully you guys are having fun. We'll find out soon enough. Next book we're talking about is Absolute Wonder Woman. This is issue 4. It's a 28-page comic for the price of $5. Written by Kelly Thompson. The art is done by Hayden Sherman. When it comes to the artwork in this comic, it's not that I dislike it. It's just different. And I feel like if you had a bit of a sharper artist on here, I think this freaking comic book would be unstoppable. I do love the facial expressions in here. I love Diana's beautiful blue eyes, right? And there's some highlights in here. It definitely has a different style, but I don't think it's for everybody. And I think it does hold the book back a little bit. But the overall story is very intriguing, right? We get to meet a lot of different characters in this issue. We wind up meeting Etta in here and Gia, and you wind up seeing another character in here at the end by the name of Veronica Cale, which is another major villain of Wonder Woman. But the whole goal of this one was defeating that big monster that you saw, and Wonder Woman getting her arm back, and we wind up seeing her go through this spell, this thing that she has to go through in order to retrieve her magical arm that she sacrificed for Steve Trevor, right? And that was just so interesting in my eyes. And the big thing, the highlight of this book also was Wonder Woman's freaking sword. Oh, dude, it's not just a freaking like Final Fantasy freaking sword. This thing is much more than that. I mean, this thing got to grow to proportions unknown. How she was able to handle this sword was absolutely insane. However, I loved it, and I found myself laughing, going, oh my god, that's crazy. But she needed that sword in order to defeat that creature, and I was like, this is so good. I absolutely love it. Again, I wish the artwork was a little bit better, because this book would probably be untouchable. I'm giving this book a B+. Like I said, it might have been a little bit slow. It took up a good portion of the issue of, getting her arm back, but I think it was integral because you had to get introduced to these types of characters, these new characters here. So yeah, I like what Kelly Thompson is doing here. Detective Comics, issue 1093. It's a 28-page comic for the price of $5. Written by Tom Taylor. The art is done by Mikhail Janin. I love the artwork in this comic. I think it looks really good. Look at how these panels are laid out. I like when it does that, flows onto the page like that. This comic book has a lot of cast of characters in here. Like, we get to see the entire Bat family, which I think is great, right? And they all team up together to try to stop this new villain from killing these teens that have committed crimes that she feels, or this new villain feels like they don't deserve to live. But of course, the Bat family's like, hey, we gotta save these guys, and we gotta figure out who this new villain is that is taking these kids' lives. So they all are there with a kid protecting them and things like that. We get to see her, which I think she is the villain. That's my prediction here. I don't know. We shall see, right? But there was lots of action in here. Batman gets into it for the first time with this villain, and it's not an easy task for him, right? And it gets very dark towards the end of this. And then at the beginning of it, we get to see a young Bruce Wayne deal with, I think, which was the person that was Joe Chill's, I think, wife at the time, or the one that had this baby. So, which I think is the pharmaceutical woman. That's what I think is going on in there. So yeah, this book is awesome. I enjoy it. I like this way better right now than the main Batman book, in my opinion. So I'm giving this one an A+. You guys may not agree with me on that, but I think Tom Taylor is doing a bang up job so far with this Batman title. All right, so now the results for the week. And this is where I changed things up, guys. Remember, I was doing a comic versus a comic, and every time a comic would win, right, that company would get a point. Well, now I'm doing a cumulative average, almost like a GPA, to find out who winds up winning for the week. I think this is much more fair in my eyes. And let's run down the comics real quick, starting off with Marvel. Here we go. Dr. Doom and Rocket issue 1 got an A+. Wolverine Revenge issue 4 received a D. Uncanny XMen issue 9 got a C, while Amazing Spider-Man issue 66 got a C-. And Ultimate Spider-Man issue 13 wound up getting an A+. So if you do the math, for me, it came to an average of a 2.6. So that's what Marvel got. Now let's move on to DC Comics. DC started off with Green Arrow issue 20, which received a B+. Justice League Unlimited got a C. Superman got an A+, while Absolute Wonder Woman received a B+. And Detective Comics received an A+, which gave that company an average of 3.2, which once again means no matter what version I do it, DC wins for the week, and they go 3-0. They are undefeated so far for the year. So there you have it, webheads. There is this week's episode of Marvel vs. DC. I think this version I like better. I think the flow moves a little bit better. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought. And as always, I'm going to leave you more content right here for you to click on. And of course, guys, remember, support the local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting. Always remember, read your comics so we have great comic conversation. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye.